Great.
Thanks, Mark.
We're getting
All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome, Adams 12 community. We are so excited to be here with you tonight for our second event in our series, Building Healthy Communities. We apologize for being a couple minutes late and just ask for grace as we attempt to do everything in new formats this year. Everything is new and different, and we're constantly adjusting, so we appreciate your patience. We're going to start tonight with a few words from our superintendent, Mr. Godowski. So Chris, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Katrina. Good evening, everybody. I am so glad that you're investing a portion of your evening and your week with us here tonight. Grateful to our outstanding panelists from our community who are going to help us through tonight's discussion and dialogue. I'm just grateful that we have this ongoing series in which we can all, wearing our parent hat, talk about our common challenges together. As I mentioned before our last session, I believe that out of all the jobs I've had and witnessed other people doing in my friend and broader network, the most challenging by far of those roles is the role of parent. It's just a very challenging, daunting, difficult task filled with a lot of self-doubt, at least for me and those that I'm close to. It's not an easy journey many of the days. And it's easy to think that the opposite about it as you look in social media. It's very easy to conclude that that family, that parent, that neighbor has it all figured out because there's all this happy messaging that goes on in social media that makes you think, gosh, I must be the one who's struggling about how to work with my kids through this challenging issue or through this struggle with peers or through this mental health crisis that they may be facing. I think the truth is the reason we're all gathered here today is that it's much more challenging than it sometimes seems from a distance, and that our children often have unique challenges. I have four, and each one of them has a very different journey in terms of child to adolescent and into adulthood. And so it's just helpful to come together with people who are walking that same path with us and have insights that might be beyond what's right in front of us now to help us walk that journey with some greater confidence, with a greater skill set, and with hope that we're going to meet our children's needs the very best we can. So thanks again for investing your time tonight. Thank you again, panelists, for sharing your expertise. This is going to be time well spent. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much. All right, so I want to start off tonight by just giving, again, as Chris said, a big thank you to everybody who took some time out to sit in conversation with us today around how we really start to support our students in these really uncertain times. A huge thank you to all of our community partners that make these events possible by supporting us, advising us, and advertising and marketing our events here in Adams 12. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Katrina Fernandez. I've served Adams 12 School District for 15 years and currently serve as the Director of Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. Tonight, we are going to be facilitating a conversation about supporting students during uncertain times between Adams 12 and Cultures of Dignity. But first, I want to do just a little bit of housekeeping. If you RSVP'd to this event, you received an email with a packet of handouts. And if you did not RSVP to this event, you can go and find the handouts that we will be using tonight on our district website at www.adams12.org/BHC, Building Healthy Communities. And on that page, you will see some handouts for tonight's session in English and in Spanish. If you are able to pull up those handouts that were either sent to you, or if you can find them on our website, it might help for you to pull them up in a tab and follow along with us tonight. But if you don't have them and you can't find them, totally okay, because we will be sending out a feedback survey, and it will continue to be on our website. So you'll be able to come back at any time and receive those resources. All right, I would like to start by introducing our wonderful panel for the evening. With me tonight is Sarah Hunter and Erin Marquez. Sarah Hunter and Erin Marquez are prevention and crisis recovery coordinators for Adams 12. Both are experienced school social workers with combined 40 years of service in the Adams 12 school district. And we also have Rosalind Wiseman with us tonight, co-founder of the company Cultures of Dignity. Cultures of Dignity is an organization that works with communities to shift the way we think about young people's physical and emotional well-being. I know Cultures of Dignity to work with schools and students around the globe, and that you strive to honor the role that young people play in building healthy communities. And you are committed to helping adults know and understand the latest research on the skills needed to work with today's youth. And Rosalind, in your spare time, besides running a company, you're also a best-selling author. Rosalind is most known for her book, Queen Bees and Wannabes, helping your daughter survive cliques, gossip, boyfriends, and the new realities of girl world, and the counterpart to that book for boys, Masterminds and Wingmen, helping our boys cope with schoolyard power, locker room tests, girlfriends, and the new rules of boy world. But your latest and greatest, hot off the press, is the Distance Learning Playbook for parents. It focuses on how to support our child's academic, social, and emotional development in any setting. Adams 12 and Cultures of Dignity first started working together in the fall of 2018-19 school year, when social emotional learning became one of the 6 big focus areas in our district strategic plan, Elevate. Cultures of Dignity also has a social emotional learning curriculum, Owning Up, and provides professional learning to help teachers not only use the curriculum with students, but really you guys support teachers' social and emotional well-being as well. We know how crucial the relationship between teachers and students is, and how powerful when we put well-regulated, calm, prepared teachers in front of students, who can make really solid connections with kids, how magical that is for students. Rosalind, I know that each time that we start to work with you at a new school, and let me also just say, for people out there that don't know, we started working with Cultures of Dignity at one school in our district 2 years ago. Since then, we've expanded to 3 others, and we have big hopes of adding more schools over the next several school years. And I know that, Rosalind, each time that we start to work with a new school, I know that you always start with principals. So I would like us to start there tonight as well. We have provided these principles that Rosalind is going to talk about in your handouts for tonight. They are on the first page, but let's get started. Rosalind, can you share with us Cultures of Dignity's principles and why they are important?
Sure. Thank you, Katrina. So principles are things that guide our behavior. And what we believe is that the world, even before this, was a very complex place. And so we need a way to just keep going back to guiding our behavior, guiding our actions. And so principles get us there. And so for this evening, I'm going to share with you some of the principles that we have shared with the schools in Adams 12, and the principles that we think are so important within our organization as well. So the first one is everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. And dignity means to be worthy, and it means it's just a given. And so if we can really focus as one of our biggest things, because we don't talk about dignity as much maybe as we should, that we just really need to remember that we deserve to be treated with dignity and others need to be treated with dignity. The second is activating curiosity, especially when we're uncomfortable, is the key to learning. Now, it doesn't feel awesome in the moment lots of times, but it is the path to being able to, if we can activate curiosity when we're uncomfortable, then what happens is our anxiety decreases and we're able to have a better sense and describe our emotions. And when that happens, we are able to process what's going on around us. And it is therefore the key to learning and understanding what's going on around you. No one knows everything. Together, we know a lot. So Katrina said that between Sarah and Aaron and me and Katrina, there is a lot of years of educational expertise on this call. There is a lot in all different kinds of capacities. So we bring a tremendous amount of expertise to this webinar. But we don't necessarily know your children. I mean, they know Adams 12 really well. I know it okay well, but we don't know your families. We don't know your children the way that you do. So we're going to present you information and you're going to add it and integrate it to what you know. So not everybody doesn't know everything. Together, we know a lot and we can really support each other. Okay, so here's one that's really important to me for always, but wow, especially right now. We want to be easy on people, but hard on ideas. Remember, Katrina said, let's give each other give like a little bit of grace. We live in a culture that loves to be really hard on people and easy on ideas. And so the principle that I'd like for you to think about is to flip it, is to be easy on people, but hard on ideas. The next is conflict is inevitable and collaboration is essential to resolution. So conflict, even in the best of schools, with the best of everything, with the best of everything, which isn't really realistic anyway, is inevitable. And schools, it is inevitable at all times that there's going to be conflict. And so how we can manage that and manage ourselves is the key to creating a school that is really strong for our children and for the people in the building who are providing the care in all different kinds of ways to our children, whether it's happening online, hybrid, all the different ways from day to day that we are now teaching our children. Listening is being prepared to be changed by what you hear. So again, what we are surrounded by is a culture that says, no, listening isn't that. Listening is just waiting until the other person makes a mistake and then in their logic or their argument, and then you explain why they're wrong. We are changing this principle so that listening is being prepared to be changed by what you hear. It does not mean you have to agree. It means that you go into it with that kind of perception so that it can guide your behavior. And then the last one is asking for help is a skill, not a weakness. And so, of course, that has always been the case. One of the things that we need to do in schools better is we have a tendency in schools to say to children, if you have a problem, a social problem, whatever, go talk to an adult. That's totally true. But which adult? Because your child needs to go through and develop the skills to be able to figure out, well, what do I need an adult to go talk to them? And who is that person in my community? Just similar to you, I would ask you the same thing as a parent, is what is the principle for you of who are the people, what is the characteristics of the people that I need to be able to go to for support? And then once you come up with those 3, 4, maybe 5, maybe one characteristic, then you go find the person that fits that. And so when we ask, and as a parent, when you are modeling asking for help as a skill, not a weakness, then your child sees that and realizes everybody can feel overwhelmed and that you can go and get support for that there's nothing to be ashamed about, that you would ask for help. So, and let's go back to what Chris said in the very beginning, is that, my goodness gracious, with parents, I have 2 of my own. Yes, I'm an expert and think a lot about parenting, and boy, have I always needed help raising my own children. So these are the principles to guide us. And I'm just going to say again that principles are the ways to guide our actions, regardless of the situation that we've got, because all different kinds of situations arise. And so by using these, this is basically a roadmap to guide yourself through difficult times.
Yeah. Whew. I should have said to everybody, buckle up. We've got some good content coming your way. Every time, Rosalind, that I hear Cultures of Dignity talk about how important principles are for guiding our behavior, a different principle sits with me, or that's one I need to go back to and really work on. And I think for tonight, that conversation is going to flow really easily into kind of the heart of why we're here tonight. And so I'm going to keep you in the hot seat
for a
little bit longer.
That's right.
And really just, I think my really first question is, this school year has been such a roller coaster for students and for families and for caregivers and teachers. And really change and unpredictability seem to be our only constant. What do you think about, or what would you say to people out there around how can students and families start to build routines in the midst of all of these changes? How can we prepare and start to settle into life when it keeps changing?
Yeah, it's just awful. Can we just admit that it's just awful? Can we honestly, every day I get another email from, and I'm like, oh God, from the school district. I'm like, oh gosh, it's just a mess. So we just need to admit that it's just a mess, and we're all trying our best to get through a really, really hard time. And many of us in education also have children, so we've got it sort of both ways. So it's a mess. So we just need to acknowledge that. Second is that, of course, and here's the thing I think that's really important for us as parents, is that research has shown for decades, especially, by the way, in World War I, World War II, they were doing research about parents in very, very high stress situations, like in England during World War II, during the bombing that was happening to them all the time. Super, super stressful. The research showed from the time that they've started doing this research until today, that the more that parents can take care of themselves and manage their own emotional management and their own social skills, the better off their children are going to be. Now, I'm going to get really granular about this, because research also shows that, because we could maybe talk about this later, that if you're worried, for example, about your child falling behind in school, and they're sitting at their laptop and you're like, I don't know if they're doing right, and you're doing that hover thing over them, and maybe you sort of sneak in and maybe do some of the work for them, your anxiety might go down, their anxiety goes up. So you're not doing your child any favors by doing that hover thing and saying, well, I just want to make sure that you're getting this or whatever, So truly, I sort of zeroed in on that. So I'm going to go back, which is the more you can manage yourself, the better your child is going to be and better off they're going to be. And so that means being able to say, when you're feeling anxious, okay, emotions are real, right? Emotions are very, very real. I'm not saying that they're not real, but they can move. You can get through emotions. So they're real in the moment, but it doesn't mean they're permanent. And I want us to think about that for ourselves and for our children. So when you're feeling a feeling of anxiety, it's really important to have the routine, basically, of saying, okay, I need to pause. I need to remember this is real right now, but I can move through it. So that's the first thing I want to highlight. I'm going to do the second thing. I'll turn it over to you, Erin, in a second. Is I really want us to, if we can focus on the routine of getting up, getting ourselves together in some way. I am trying to meditate 10 minutes a day. I'm trying to start off with a cup of tea. I'm trying to do those kinds of things. I am turning off my screens an hour before I go to bed and reading a book. Notice, by the way, that I'm saying me. I'm not focusing on my children. We have to do that. And then we can then turn to our children to do that, because also we have to have credibility when we talk to them. So, and again, if you're waking up in the middle of the night because you're stressed, which is understandable. You pick up your phone and do that, you're not making it easier for yourself. That's a routine. That's something that's going to break your routine. So we can have all those things for our kids. Wake up, get a cup of tea, don't try very hard not to have them be in class, in bed, you know what I mean? Have them sleep, not look at screens an hour before, but we have to do those too. So those are the things I want us to focus on. And I think, Katrina, we're going to turn it over to Erin too, to answer this as well.
Yeah, I was actually going to turn it over to Sarah to kind of talk.
That's okay. No, what you're saying though reminds me of a mantra that we say a lot on our crisis team or as the mental health people, that it's not what happens to kids, it's how the adults around them respond, right? And so much of what we do in schools is, just like when you're on a flight and you're anxious at a flight, right? And you look to the flight attendant. Well, that's what the kids are doing for our teachers. That's what they're doing as parents, right? When the flight attendant is calm, we stay calm. And so I just think right now our teachers are really working hard, and school staff, to build those routines and structures. So just like your principles that you're saying you go back to, that they go back to the principles of the classroom, right? And so I think about, we have elementary schools like Skyview, they have, respectful, responsible, and ready, right? So when kids don't know what to do, we can always go back to that. Or at Westlake, they have the Westlake way. And so that helps ground us and ground the kids into where we need to go and what structures that we have in place.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, you guys. Erin, I maybe saw you want to hop in, or should we keep going?
Well, I was just going to say that, and the why behind this, right? That when we think about what is the reason that we want routines and structures, and why is that important? And it's because, as Sarah said, it helps ground us, but that consistency and familiarity then helps decrease our anxiety. So then we can start operating from that thinking part of our brain. We can access learning, and we can do our very best in that space when we know what to expect. And so I know in this space particularly, our educators have done a great job around making sure that our students know what our safety protocols are and why they're in place and how we follow them, and making sure that we practice them so that, again, they have that sense of safety, that predictability, and so then they can turn their attention to the learning.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
And it makes me think of, when sometimes, and Rosalind, I'd be interested in what you have to say about this, because I think when we talk with our kids about, and there's a disconnect, right, between what the kids are seeing, a lot of times we'll say something like, well, I haven't heard that before, or that's not my experience, but let's research that together. So we're not putting the student or pitting them against the school. It's kind of getting them to acknowledge that maybe we're hearing something different than our child, and how can we support them in gathering more information.
Oh my gosh, I totally agree. I mean, I pretty much a blanket statement or a blanket response when someone tells you something that is surprising to you, or you are like, I've never heard that before, is actually not to say that. I mean, really, like, your kid comes to you with a problem, and your response could be, or if it is like, really? Or, and frankly, because we, as you all know, I talk to a lot of teachers and I train teachers, and sometimes teachers do that without realizing that they're doing it. So, a child comes to them and gives them information that's really different from anything they've seen in a classroom or anything. And they're very well-intentioned responses. Really? Are you sure? And as soon as that happens, the other person on the receiving end of it feels like they're not being listened to or not believed. That's a modification, basically. What Sarah's also, and I so agree, is that your child, when they come to you with information, without meaning to, has a particular viewpoint about looking at whatever it is. Like, say on Schoology that they did an assignment and it didn't show up, and they're really frustrated by it. And so they come to you and they are very frustrated by this. I would say also, just sort of a modification on that theme is, when your child comes to you with this kind of information, you are only still seeing one sliver of the information. And so to be able to say, oh, I didn't know that, or wow, let's go research that. Let's go find out more information, creates an opportunity for your child to have ownership over their education, and for you to also be that calm adult who is walking through the process. That's really important, because sometimes what happens is, again, we mean the best right now, and sometimes it's really hard, but we get this information, we've had a bad day, whatever it is, and then we like maybe shoot off an email to somebody that's got like all capitals, and that's not good. We want to avoid that if at all possible. So yeah, so I just think Sarah's point is just really well taken.
All right, I'm going to keep us moving. Besides just the absolute challenge of different schedules, different routines, massive amounts of communication and information coming our way, I know that when I'm talking with principals and teachers and parents, a lot of times what we're talking about, especially during this pandemic, is just the concern around social connections and friendships, because we know how important school is, brick and mortar school is, to nurturing all of the social connections and social development that kids need. And so I think all of us have real concern around, as we've moved more online, or we've had some of our social connections become disconnected, how is that impacting our kids? And so, Roz, I'm going to go first to you again, but can you share like how can parents really support their students or their children in creating and maintaining positive friendships now and during this time?
Yeah. So this is really, so here's the thing. They are maintaining their friendships often online. And it is also true that our children are exhausted being online all the time. So, so there's a couple of things I want us to think about. One is that I want us to think about technology and social media in the following way, and then be able to communicate that to our children. So the first bucket I want you to think about for social media and technology is maintaining connection with people. So you might be doing that by talking to your sister every couple of weeks, or your mom, or your college roommate, or whatever, like on FaceTime. And your kids are doing that too, like with their camp friends, or a friend that they don't see very often, or like parallel watching a movie or doing their homework on FaceTime. Group chats are really important. Multiple player video games, really important. I know, but they are. And that's connection, and that's positive. And then the other bucket I want us to think about for social media is about creating. Kids are creating really, really cool things using social media, also good. The third bucket is consumption, not good. So that is when you are like scrolling, and I'm using you because we all do it too, where we scroll through Instagram or go down the rabbit hole of YouTube videos, not good. So what we want to do is, when we talk to our children, is to separate that, because we're acknowledging the importance of maintaining their friendships, acknowledging how cool some of the things are that they're creating on social media, and saying this one part over here, this is a problem. This is where you feel, where you're getting your feed and you feel insecure, or you feel fear of missing out, or you feel you're comparing yourself to other people and you're getting more anxious. And then the other part, though, is you can't just have them do it all day, right? Because we have to go back to the routine that we talked about before. So my guess, and Sarah, Aaron, I would be really, curious about your guidelines for this as well, is that I'm feeling like after a 5-6 hour, maybe online school day, that the students get 90 minutes to maybe 2 hours to be online, to do maintaining of friendships and creation of stuff. And then it goes back, and it goes into the routine of reading a book, going outside, like, getting your eyeballs off the screen. So that's my sense of it, but I'd be really curious to know what you all think as well.
Yeah, I think it's such a good point, right? And in the beginning, my son, that was the only way he was connecting, right, with kids, was through gaming and lots of people on games. And it did get to the point where it was 5 hours, because that was, he wasn't going out to see friends, he wasn't doing anything, and he was happy and laughing. And then when he wasn't, it was pretty hard. And so it was how do you set those limits, right? It was like now, we are down to the 90 minutes, 2 hours, but it's really hard to wean them off and set those limits when they're not really getting connections in any other way. Now they're starting to go back hybrid, right, in high school now, so that feels a little better, but it's a tough conversation to have.
Mm-hmm.
And Roz, what I think really sits with me when you're speaking about those 3 C's, the connection and creativity and consumption, is that, and I was just thinking about my son in this space, and he's 7 now, but he had learned about the Facebook Messenger for kids, and he would connect with his friends there, but I would listen to them playing the games, and they would be encouraging each other and helping each other navigate the game together, and hey, let's join this game together. And so it was very intentional. And I just think about the educational setting, how intentional our educators have been in this space as well. I think if we were to ask them the same question, they would say, we spend a lot of our time supporting our students with building these skills and connecting with one another, and that, I think they intentionally weave it in throughout the day. So, whether it's morning meetings or connection circles, or, during advisory time or during classroom discussions, where they help them apply the skills of being able to socially interact with one another. So what does it look like to negotiate? What does it look like to take the perspective of a friend? What does it look like to be empathetic towards somebody else? And then I would also say that they probably spend a lot of time around coaching and refining of these skills. And, I spent a lot of my time in elementary and a lot of time out at recess or during lunch, and also in the hallways in high schools, and just in small breakout groups and in the small groups, but around helping them know how to solve problems with their friends and share how they're feeling and how it made them feel, or how it landed with them when their friend said something to them, or when they're feeling excluded, what to do, or how to advocate for themselves when they're really feeling left out. And so I think that that connection piece is just so important. And I know how hard our educators are working to make sure that our students are continuing to have that opportunity, irregardless of what environment that they're in, whether it's brick and mortar, that hybrid, or remote. And so I think that's the big takeaway here is that, and I really like how you frame the consumption piece, right? If we're just looking through and comparing ourselves, and there's really no purpose behind it except for that, just to peruse, that it's not healthy. And so if we can help ourselves frame why are they connecting? How are we making sure it's authentic and healthy? That's essential. So.
Yeah. And actually, I got an email from my son goes to Fairview, and we got I think it was from the Fairview principal. I'm not sure if it was from the superintendent from BVSD, but the list of like, what are you doing now? You're going back to hybrid. And I think we're starting to get the kids back in school. And one of them was like, go outside and look at a tree. The second was, number 6 was do not watch the news for a day. And let me just say, because that's a consumption issue too, do we really need to know the specifics right now of like, this is my personal opinion, but it's helping me a lot. I know what I need to know right now to know that there are some significant challenges in the world, and I need to show up as healthy, mentally, emotionally, and physically as I can. For my kids, for my community, the way I talk to people in the grocery store, whatever. And so I really feel like I have taken off, just so y'all know, like I watched The Social Dilemma, which is a really good documentary. I highly recommend it. And it's from people from around this area, which is super cool. But I took off my Facebook, Instagram, from my phone, because I just like, this is nuts. Like, I don't need to know the specifics, and I just need to operate in my community as strong as I can. So for me, that's also a consumption issue. So that's what I've been doing too. And it's working pretty well. I'm feeling better for it, say it that way.
I was just thinking about, I could imagine that for some parents out there who have maybe had endless conversations with their teens or students about screen time, and where it just feels like there's a lot of conflict. Is there, Rosalind, where would you recommend what is the one battle or the one fight that you would really encourage parents to hold on to in the screen time debate?
Gosh, you all, I mean, I think the hour before they go to sleep. If I have to choose one thing, I think it's the hour before they go to sleep.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you, that's what I think. I'm putting my flag on that one. That's what I think.
And how do you frame that conversation in the best way possible? I just think sometimes, we get into these power struggles, right, with our kids, because it's like, no, you can't do this. And then they have all these really great and really compelling reasons why they want to be on their screens, right? And half the time you kind of are with them on it, but it is that consumption and it's not helpful. So how do you have that conversation?
Well, it depends on how old they are too, right? Because like the one that just came in from, I think, into like my senior that just walked in, who's just like, well, oh, that's my husband walking by, is that, they're going to bed later than we are. So we have to trust them, which is just awful. I mean, it's not awful, but it's just that what it means, what I really mean is that the power is that like, I'm going to bed at latest at 10:30, like possibly 10:33 is my latest I get to. And so he wants to unwind by playing a video game. So, and that's hard because I need to go to bed. Like I need to go to bed. So one of the things that I think can be really irritating is that people in my position who like write books and do parenting stuff, it's like what you're saying. It's like without the context of actually what real parenting is, which is that children go, yeah, sure. And they don't actually do it. It doesn't mean they're bad people, that they're technically lying to you, but like, it's not, it's just what parenting is about. They just push on those boundaries all the time because they think what they're doing is more important than the rule that you are setting for them. So my experience actually recently is that I think that kids are actually realizing how exhausted they are. Getting off the screen. So what I have been tending to do is just to do again, he's 17, is to do a reminder check-in of like, this is what you're doing, and reminding him of like, this is why we're doing it. And then at a certain point, I feel like at that age, have to let him go. But for younger kids, I think as we get, younger and the bedtimes are actually sort of coming that way, you have more control over that. And so then you're getting to the place more of not wanting to just fight with your kid about this. And so what I would do is this: I would prepare to have the conversation, not when they're having the game. When they're playing the game is the wrong time to be having this conversation. It's not going to go well. So you pick a time and you schedule a time to talk to them about it. You tell them it's going to take about 3 minutes to have this conversation because they're worried that this conversation is going to go on for like, I don't know, an hour. So just say it's going to be 3 minutes. You're going to say exactly what you want. You're going to ask them what they heard back. Like, what did you just hear me say? Why are we doing this? I'm holding myself to the same standard. That's what we're doing in this. It's the principle in this family that we hold each other to the same standards this way. And then at that point, you're going to have that conversation probably repeatedly, right? It's not like one conversation solves the problem, but you are managing also and showing how to have a difficult conversation. So that's and acknowledge, the last thing I would do is acknowledge the reason, the motivation of why they're doing it, which is, I really understand how important it is for you to be doing this right now. And we have to do it in a way that keeps you healthy. So that's my tendency, is a strategy of how we talk to our kids when things are hard, when we're having a hard conversation.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to give Roz a chance to gently get off the hot seat, but not fully. And Erin, I'm putting you right on there. So the other day, we were having a meeting with our community partners who also happen to be community members in Adams 12, and many of them are Adams 12 parents. And I was talking with them about this upcoming event and was just kind of probing them, giving some questions around like, what would you ask a parenting expert? What would you be interested to hear about? And one of the community members really said, you know, I think parents are spending more time with kids than usual because of our safer at home restrictions. And what I think and she said, what I worry about and what I hear my friends worrying about is how because we're spending more time, there's a little bit more pressure or anxiety around supporting students' mental health. And after she said that to me, it really made me think about, I didn't quite know what she meant and I think what tripped me up was me really starting to think about like, well, what is her definition of mental health? And so I guess, Erin, what I want to ask you is, how do we define mental health? What does that really mean? And how can we help parents and caregivers and teachers support their students' mental health?
That's a good question, and I often hear that. You know, what do you even mean by that term, mental health? And a few things I think of is oftentimes I hear mental illness and mental health used interchangeably, or they're equated to one another, and yet that's simply not the case. That they are not the same thing. And so I think the one important, or there's a couple of things to take away from this is, one, we all have mental health, right? Just like we have physical health and we have spiritual health, and, you know, part of our overall health is mental health. And so when we think about mental health, I really want to say that mental health is not the absence of disease, that mental health is really our mental well-being. And so what does that mean? That's our emotions, our thoughts and feelings, our ability to solve problems and cope when things are difficult, our sense of self and identity, and our ability to be in relationships that are healthy and feel that sense of connection with others and with our community. And so really when I think, what I think is essential about understanding mental health is that we know that it's something that we all have. You know, you can't escape it. And when we look through that lens, I think it really reduces the stigma that is often attached to mental health. And so knowing that we all have it, and knowing what it is, right? That it's our feelings, it's our thoughts, it's our ability to regulate our emotions, it's, you know, how we connect with others. If we understand that, then we know where to lean into to support ourselves and to support our students with developing their mental health or refining it, or supporting them when they might be struggling with one of those aspects of it. And that mental health really occurs across the continuum. We are going to have our good mental health days, and we're going to have our days that are really challenging. And, you know, that's when we're stressed out and things are really overwhelming. And so that doesn't mean that we have mental illness, but at times when it's prolonged and things are going on and it's difficult, then it might move into that part of the continuum. But that, and then that's when we seek help. But I think that it's important to know that we all have it. And so there's lots of ways to support it within ourselves and others.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do you, Rosalind, I'm wondering from your perspective, what, I'm sure that parents approach you a lot with that same question that I just asked Erin, and knowing a little bit about your work, I've heard you talk about one of the things you hear most often as a parenting expert is, I just want my kids to be happy and healthy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if I can put you on the spot and have you kind of share that with us tonight, how you kind of talk parents through that concept.
Sure. And really important, especially, I mean, you know, it's like especially now, but so happiness, we really have to drill down on what that means to us. And it can't mean no conflict, right? Because conflict's inevitable. So you have to learn how to manage conflict. It can't mean not having failures, because we are going to have failures. And it can't mean not having hard times, because clearly we're going to have hard times. So what do we do? How do we define happiness when those things are actually just truisms of life? So here's how I'd like maybe for you all to think about it, and it is included in our slide deck, is that we define happiness in five ways at Cultures of Dignity. One is meaning beyond oneself. The second is hope of success. Third is meaningful social connection. Fourth is satisfying work. And the fifth is a place to process and find peace. So I would ask you as a parent, what makes you happy? Like, go through these 5 things. I'll give you some examples of meaning beyond oneself. Could be that you're contributing to the school in some way. A hope of success. Well, parenting basically is like a hope of success, right? Because we all have these moments. Well, maybe you have not. I certainly have, of like, oh my gosh, I need to remember this is a moment, not a lifetime, because I am really worried right now, or I am so angry right now at this child. I don't even know what to do with myself. So hope of success is parenting. Meaningful social connection, like connecting with your college roommate on FaceTime. Not meaningful social connection is like when when people do sort of fake responses on Instagram, like, oh, you're so cute, you're so cute, you're so cute. So I talk to middle school people about that, right? That's not meaningful social connection. Satisfying work. The reason I bet why everybody on this Zoom call loves to be in education, even though it has its challenges at the best of times, is that it's incredibly satisfying because we feel like we're contributing and it's really challenging and we're trying to figure new stuff out. So that's satisfying work. And a place to process and find peace, probably the most important right now, which is, maybe it's getting up earlier before the family gets up and just having your cup of tea when things are quiet. So I just ask you to think about, like, what is it? Because when we go through hard times, if we could identify those things that make us happy, it's going to pull us through, right? And what Erin's talking about with mental health and being able to take care of ourselves in that way. This is one maybe way of thinking about it. And you can also ask your child to identify 5, any of these things for themselves, because it grounds them the way we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, that's really helpful. How, and Sarah, let me get you in on this conversation. How, as you're approaching your student or your child, either as a parent or as a teacher, and that kid is having really big feelings, maybe an increase of anxiety, feeling really stressed, stating that they're feeling overwhelmed. What are some of those first go to back pocket moves that a teacher might make with that student, that a school social worker would make with that student?
Such a good question, because I think right now our kids are just having really big emotions. And some kids who maybe you hadn't seen have big emotions just because there's so much coming at them. And I think the most important thing, we keep hearing, oh, my kid's anxious, they're there. But what's really below the surface, right? What is that emotion about? And what we say is emotions are really important to understand and lean in and to really listen and be present in the emotion so that you can help your child get through it. The more we say, suck it up, or you'll be fine, and I've done that, right? I've done that as a parent. Like, I don't have time to sit with this emotion, or I'm frustrated, right? And we try to push it away. It comes up, right? Another way, like whack-a-mole, that game. So the more present, and we see this a lot with our teachers and our mental health professionals in the school, that they will just sit with a child and lean into their discomfort and help them through the emotion. And you're either going to spend time there, or you're going to spend time in an explosion or with other behavior. So it's the best thing you can do is just sit and be present and listen. And sometimes what I'll even say to a child is, do you want my advice right now? Or do you want a suggestion? Or do you want me to just listen? Right. And sometimes that's really helpful too, because sometimes, or they'll say, I don't know, and so then you just back up and listen even more and help them through it. Because what we say is there's no way out. There's only through when it comes to a stressful and hard situation.
Really good.
Yeah. So part of, as I'm listening to all of you experts tonight, really one of the themes I keep hearing over and over again is the importance of having really good listening skills as a parent. And even going back to the very beginning where Rosalind started us with the principle of listening really means showing up and being ready to be changed by what you hear. When you talked about that principle tonight, one of the first things that came into my mind as a parent is, goodness, have I really been living up to that? And as parents, I think, and I think teachers feel this way too. I remember being in the classroom in times of prolonged stress, or just if you're in a challenging emotion or situation, it's really easy to start to feel overwhelmed and at your limit and become less patient. And sometimes as a parent, you might end up parenting in ways that you don't want to, yelling more than you ever expected to, or not sticking with the agreements that are made. And so I think really if anybody can hop in first on this one, but what suggestions do you guys have to help parents parent the way they want to? How can parents start to be more supportive and less emotional?
Is that for Sarah? Is that for me or for Sarah?
Sarah can start us off.
I can go first.
I just think we'll put her in the hot seat. I like that.
I know. I'm like, what?
Woo! I think we all want to be like the best problem solvers. And I know teachers want to be their best selves, parents want to be their best selves. And we think we go down this, rabbit hole of, okay, we're going to solve this problem. And then it goes so wrong, right? And so what we know is the best way to solve problems and to be present with your kids is when we're regulated. And you talked about that in the beginning. It's just really finding ways to regulate ourselves. And we talk about this self-care, right? Self-care is so important. It's so important. And people start to think, oh, that's massage. Well, I can't do that all the time, or I'm going to go on a vacation, or it's a glass of wine. But really what we say is that's more self-soothing. That's like a immediate response. That's, making you feel better in the moment. Self-care is really a practice, right? It's something that that happens throughout the day, every day, throughout the weeks. And like Rosalind, I think you brought this up, like having tea in the morning and really taking a moment to think about the day before you start it. Teachers inherently do this in our classrooms all the time to try and regulate and de-stress the class. And we do it with our structures and routines and what we need to learn to do it as humans, right, every day. And so it's finding that time in the morning, finding that time at lunch, finding that time in the afternoon to really stop, whether it's take a 5-minute walk, have a cup of coffee, talk with a friend on the phone that has nothing to do with work, even if it's for 2 minutes, right? It shifts your brain and gets you into something else that you're thinking about. And schools do that too, right? We do mindfulness, breathing exercises to, regulate their bodies, go noodle in the classroom, right? They have great programs where they dance or they, do some calming activities wherever the kids need it. And so if we can start to create those practices, then your ability to regulate and really listen and hone in on what your kids are saying to you is a lot better. Now, like you said, it's easy to say that. To do it all the time is the challenge, and that's okay too.
I actually wrote down so many things, Sarah, that you wrote about the nowhere. There's no way out. There's only through. It's just all this stuff. You're like, oh, really? But and so true, just so true. And I just want to highlight a couple things I thought were really important. The sit, be present, and listen. And do you want advice? Do you want a suggestion? Or do you want me to listen? Is so important because it also stops us from going into automatic fix-it mode or the interrogation mode of like, well, what were you doing? Well, what was the other children doing? What was the teacher doing? Right? And then kids will shut down. But it also makes the child think, oh, what do I want? Right. Like they actually have to slow themselves down. And as you said, like most of the, they just usually they want to vent, but I just love the advice, suggestion, and listen. So I wanted to reinforce, I wanted to just say it again. So Katrina, you asked, one of the things we talked about, and I think this is appropriate for here, is the sentence stems that parents can use. So, okay. So I'm just going to go up. This is again what you'll find in the slide deck, the handouts, excuse me, when you get that. But here we go. Okay. So and I realize I haven't done one, but we can go back if needed. So if the child comes to you and says, can I talk to you for a moment, or can I, or something general, I really like Sarah's suggestion. So this is just another one. So I'm really sorry if it's something sort of negative or complicated, like I'm sorry and thank you for telling me, because you're acknowledging that they're in a way taking a risk by telling you, because it's complicated telling parents sometimes when things are going off. And so if it's general, if the comment is general, then you want to get a little bit more information without looking like you're freaking out. Okay, so without interrogating them. So here's, or interviewing for pain. That's also a really important thing, right? Of like looking for the problem that happened. For example, interviewing for pain is like, where did you sit? And that, well, now we're all so controlled that way. I'm just going to move on and just focus on this. So when a child comes to you with a very general thing, you say, I'm sorry and thank you for telling me. I want to make sure I understand what happened. So can you give me more details so I don't make assumptions? Now, these are sentence stems. Teachers, I'm a teacher, love sentence stems. You don't have to use exactly this language, because if it doesn't sound like your kids who know you really well, and they're going to be like, but you go to some parenting webinar or something, did you read some book? Like, right. So I think the most important is, I'm sorry that happened to you. Thank you for telling me. And then I actually would go to Sarah's suggestion of, do you want me to listen? Do you want a suggestion? Like after they say something. So you're using modifications of these things and make it your own. Katrina, can I go on to one more maybe? Is that okay?
Please go for it.
Okay. So, okay. Really important is validating and not relating. So what that means is that it's really common for parents to say, and frankly, adults to say to young people, I was your age once. I know what it's like. I know what you're going through. Even before all of this, we don't know what each other's experiences are like. So we don't, in our attempts to say, like, I hear you, I understand you, I empathize with you. Relating actually doesn't really work. But what does work is validating. And the other part is that this generation of young people, even before all this, is growing up very differently than we ever grew up. Like we had privacy growing up. Our children don't have privacy. And frankly, they didn't have privacy, not only because of social media companies coming at them all day long, but because parents are posting pictures of their kids when they're born, right? Up to their, every moment, every first day of school, all that stuff that we contributed to them not having privacy. So the world that they are growing up in that's only a little tiny bit of it, is vastly different than the way that we grew up. So instead, what I'd like for you to think about saying, and again, you have this as a handout, is something like, I was your age once, but I don't understand what it's like to grow up now. I don't exactly understand how you feel. I can maybe relate to having problems with friends, or feeling lonely, or feeling anxious. You can say that part. If they're talking to you about those feelings, you can say, yeah, I understand those feelings. So I'm going to say it again, which is, I was your age once, but I don't understand what it's like to grow up now. So I'd really like to understand that. I'd really like to listen to you first before I give you any advice or suggestions. And so another little sentence stem that you can use if you're a fix-it person, if you're having a hard time controlling your fix-it compulsion, which many of us have, and we're on a growth, we're all learning and growing, is so we can say, it's important to listen to you before I give you any advice. If I go into fix-it mode, let me know, and I'm going to do my best to stop, right? So, and maybe our kid can even say something to us, or like, like mom, or like something, dad. And that little dad mom thing is, you're going into fix-it mode. Please take a pause. So that's another one that we can think about. And I think there's one more. Oh yeah. There's one more sentence stem that I wanted to put out there, and it goes back to what Katrina said about giving everybody a little grace. So there are two things that are my default responses when somebody says something that highly irritates me or upsets me. So this can help you with everything, like adults, your children, whatever. But when somebody says something that makes you really upset or angry, my response is to say 3 words right before it in response. Help me understand. So help me understand. And then you repeat back what the person said that is so troubling to you. You got to make sure that your tone is not sarcastic, because, you know, sarcasm does not work. It cancels out all of your hard work trying to treat people with dignity and having a good conversation. So help me understand why. And then can you help me understand why you are not listening to me about you getting off screens an hour before bedtime, right? And then if the person is really, I just have to say, because we're all living in this world, I'm pretty sure, I'm gonna show you my phone, that I'm getting a notice from BVSD where my child attends that he was apparently absent today for one class that is he's constantly being notified as being absent, which apparently he's not. I am living the life with you. Okay, so last thing is, if a person says something that's like super crazy, is you can say, this is clearly very important to you and I'd like to understand why. Will you explain it to me? So again, we got to be real careful on our tone, but this can help you with adults who are saying things or for your children. So these are my default sentences that I go to when I'm struggling with people.
I just think that's so helpful. I want to remind everybody out there that you can find these handouts that we're all referring to on the Adams 12's website at www.adams12.org/BHC, Building Healthy Communities. And we will be sending out a survey. And so you can reach out to us and request those resources if you can't find them on the website. Erin, did I see that you maybe wanted to hop in there?
I did. I just had one follow-up to what Roz and Sarah had just shared. And it was that we recognize that we are all humans. And so sometimes we are not going to get it right that first time. And so knowing that you can come back to that conversation and really just name it, you know, I'm sorry, I didn't get it right. I wasn't in the right space, or I wasn't listening the way I would like to. Please share with me again, and using Roz's sentence stems to lean back into that conversation. But if you feel like you messed it up the first time, you can always come back to it.
That's so true, Erin, because our kids, they bring up these conversations. You're in the car, you're in the middle of the grocery store, and they tell you something big, and your look is like, really? Right? I mean, it can be the wrong time, right? And so you're like, how okay, my reaction didn't match how I really feel, right? You could say something like that. And I think teachers can use that skill too, because, you know, they're in the middle of a class and a kid says something big and their reaction is this, and then, right? What are you talking about? Sit down, right? Or, because we're human and kids, they're always putting us on the hot seat. We're in the hot seat. And, you know, during quarantine, I always tell this story. My son would always say, oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. And he is a pretty fine kid overall. But I knew he was probably struggling. And so we'd go on walks or hikes, right? And I call it walking my son. And he said I could tell this story. And so... and they'd get out there and then everything would come out, right? Like all his frustrations, all the stress. And, you know, it was his way of getting it out. And I didn't have to fix it, but it was his way of expressing his emotions. And so sometimes we don't know when it's going to happen.
I so appreciate, Rosalind, the sentence stems, and Sarah, such a good reminder at the end around sometimes the best conversations happen when we least expect it. Yes. And how for some kids, just sitting in that direct one-on-one conversation like we are now is too intense. Get out on a basketball court, go on a walk, go for a drive. Some of my best conversations with students happened in that kind of walking around the school building. I just think it's so helpful when we can get out and meet and connect in different ways. So looking at our time, I do want to not leave the evening without talking about something really important as well. And really, this question is really directed to Adams 12. And I think, Sarah, I'd like you to kind of start us off. But how do parents recognize when their students might need more support? Because a lot of what we've talked about are some tips and some strategies and ways to just change our lens, think from a different perspective, try out some new skills. But for our parents out there who have a student who's really struggling, or for a student who is experiencing a crisis, what types of supports or suggestions do you have for them?
Yeah, it's always a good question. And it's always an important thing to discuss for us. I love the principle of asking for help is a skill, not a weakness. That is a mantra or a principle that our mental health team and counseling team really strive to uphold, because we talk about that as a team when we're working with kids who are struggling, that are in crisis. We say, when your skills end, reach out, call Erin or myself, call a team member. We're all working in this together, because there's always going to be a time where your skills end. And as parents, like we've said all night, we want to know our children. We want to do what's best for our kids. And you as a parent know what's best for your child. But there's always going to be a time where you need some support. And so non-urgent support looks like reaching out to the principal, reaching out to any mental health provider in the school, reach out to your teachers, maybe your pediatrician if you're connected to a pediatrician that you really trust. Those are great people to reach out to. If you're in an immediate crisis where you are just not sure what to do, it could be any crisis within your family, you can call the Colorado Crisis Services line. They have a website that you can access as well, but their number is 1-844-493-8255. And you can call them 24/7 and just talk to them. I just got in a conflict with my child. I'm just not sure what to do. You can talk to them about that. If you feel like your child is a harm to themselves or someone else, you can call, if you don't need to call 911, you can call them and they will guide you through support. So it's a great service in Colorado that can help you access whatever support you need. If your child is worried about someone else, or you're worried about someone else, not your child, you can call Safe to Tell or text Safe to Tell, and they can help get that child's support through the school and through law enforcement. And so that's another avenue for you. So help yourself, you call Colorado Crisis. Help someone else, you call Safe to Tell.
Great. I really appreciate that. In our just last several minutes, we can really have people done by, maybe we'll even let them out a little bit early from our webinar, like 7:25-ish. I think we've really spent a lot of time talking about some better parenting tools. And so I'm going to give it to Sarah or Erin first, and then to Rosalind. But, just want to give you the opportunity to talk about any other programs or strategies that Adams 12 is using in order to support student well-being and hopefully prevent challenges. And then after you guys have that opportunity, I think, Rosalind, is there any final words you would give to parents around how to make that bridge and connection between parents and schools, and how to become better partners for our students?
Yeah. I'm starting to
Take it away.
I feel like it's supposed to, I'm like, okay.
You're going to hop in first?
No, I mean, I certainly can. I just, my apologies. I just thought, I thought that I was going second. So one of the things, and Katrina, will you correct me if I'm, one of the things in answer to what Katrina is asking is that we have things called tiny guides that it's been a huge revelation to me as somebody who writes a lot of books and likes to write a lot of lesson plans and curriculum, and I'm just constantly writing and doing all this stuff. And so one of the things I've realized over this experience, and it's really a good example of these tiny guides, is less is more. This probably is going to be the thing I need to remember for the rest of my life, is that I've learned that less is more. So the tiny guides are, and Katrina, this is where I'm looking to if I say it wrong, that the teachers of Adams 12 have access. They have access to the tiny guides. So because you all oh my gosh, how do I even say, I'm just going to say it. I work with places all over the place. And I'm just going to say in a positive way that my experience with Adams 12 is so clearly that this team is so and the people, the administrators, the principals, the teachers, the people who specialize in SEL, the core curricula teachers, they so clearly value the emotional health of your children and social emotional learning. And it is, and also taking care of their teachers. And so I just really, from my perspective, and the tiny guides are a part of this, is that the district then supported teachers getting the tiny guides. So that's a really convoluted way of saying we have these resources that are very inexpensive, that are called tiny guides, that break down into 18 component parts: managing your emotions, what are emotions, how the brain works. And so you can use this for yourself, and you can use it with your children. I used it with my own 17-year-old when he was going through a hard time. I used the tiny guide for emotional hijacking, like why your brain just sort of spins out. And it was really the thing that he resonated with the most of pretty much anything I've ever been a part of. So, and, helped to create or anything like that. So I really do think those are probably, from my end, the best resource for you all. The distance learning playbook is also there for you. And it just came out, I think today or yesterday. So that's there also for you to be able to understand that you don't have to be a teacher, but that's not the expectation. And you can see all these resources people are giving you. But the distance learning playbook gives you how to be behind the scenes supporting your child academically and with social emotional learning. And so those are the two resources that I think are important. And, I want to say, it's going to be a hard year. It is a hard year. Things are going to be really tricky. Schools are, I just think, remember to give each other grace. The thing that I know about working with this school district, I'm just going to say it again, that I work in all different kinds of places, that it is absolutely clear to me that the people on this call and who are in the district deeply, deeply care about the emotional health of your child.
Thanks, Roz.
You're so welcome, Katrina. It is true. It is really my experience.
Any closing words, Sarah or Aaron?
Well, I was just going to expand on what Roz had just shared about the commitment to our students' social emotional learning. And, through 5C, our community made it clear that was something that they were committed to as well and wanted to see leveraged within our schools. And so over the past year, we've done a lot of work around hiring social emotional learning specialists in buildings and additional mental health support, making sure that we are looking at universally, so school-wide, system-wide, what are some social emotional learning curriculums and skills that we want our students to learn and walk away with, because we know that when our students have a strong EQ, so emotional intelligence, that all of these things that we're just talking about, their mental health, their mental well-being, their ability to be happy or experience happiness and to feel connected, is grounded in having strong social emotional skills. And so, and Sarah might talk a little bit more about this, but we just have a lot of programs that we have looked at. We've gone through curriculum adoption. We are continuing to look at our prevention, intervention, and postvention support systems to make sure that they are comprehensive and and responsive to students' needs. And so I appreciate you talking about that, Rosalind. And, you know, I think that we continue to have and make that commitment to our families and students and staff.
I think you guys summed it up. That was wonderful. And I agree that our heart is with our students and our families and our staff, and that this is just an extraordinarily hard time. And we're here to support the system and support all of the social emotional health and well-being of our system and community. And that's the purpose of these types of evenings. And we're looking forward to doing more.
All right. Well, thank you, panel experts. It was wonderful getting to learn right alongside with you tonight. And I think just a final thank you to our audience. We know how hard and challenging it can be sometimes to carve out some time for yourself and to sit. I know that some parents invited their high school kids to sit with them tonight. So we're excited that some kids listened in. We'd love to hear from you as well, what you thought of the experience. And, you know, I know that I'm walking away with a couple more tools than I had before. And I really hope that everybody out there as well is walking away with maybe one new perspective, one new way to think about something, and one way to start a conversation with somebody, with anybody that you've been wanting to have for a while. And so, like I said, we'll be sending out a survey to participants probably tomorrow. And don't forget to check out our website to find your resources, and please reach out at any time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.